feel like when people talk about this site, it's always coupled with the universal story of being able to get away with playing Flash games in class, because since the website is called Cool Math Games, you could get away with playing Flash games in class, but I never really had that happen. I think the first time I played Cool Math Games was actually by recommendation of the teacher. We were on our computers and the teacher was just like, okay everyone, we're gonna be playing some cool math games. He didn't give us any specific games to play, he just dropped us onto the main site. Was I a rebel for choosing to play Sticky Ninja Academy and not Math Man? Was the teacher just cool, letting us play Flash games instead of doing schoolwork? It was kinda cool, I guess. He had a giant Spider-Man plush hanging from the ceiling of his classroom. It was kinda mean, though. Oh yeah, I'm filming here because it kinda looks like the old website. I used to see this game all the time on the Cool Math homepage. There were Snoring, Snoring Wild West, Snoring Pirates, Snoring Christmas, Snoring Rio, Boring, Snoring Next Generation, but I have like zero memory of ever playing it. All I remember is these fucking animals. I used to think that they were original for the game, but years after playing it for the first time, I swear I kept seeing that owl and that elephant all over the place. Were people stealing from Snoring? Was Snoring stealing from people? I guess we'll never know. It's clip art. So I had a pretty general idea of what Snoring played like. I think I played a little bit of Wild West, maybe? And I mostly just remembered it as a game where you have to click on animals in the correct order, I think to kill them? That was kinda close. So the way Snoring works is like this. It's a physics puzzle game where you have to combine the powers of different animals to knock a snoring elephant off a cliff. Some animals activate their powers when you click on them, and some animals activate their powers when hit by other animals. It's like a Rube Goldberg machine for aspiring serial killers. It starts off pretty simple at first when you only have a couple animals to deal with, and you mostly just have to figure out the correct order to click them in, but then these cloud platforms are introduced, which makes the game a lot less fun. Instead of adding an extra challenge to the gameplay, usually the cloud platforms just create a very frustrating game of trial and error, because it's either that or having to calculate the trajectories and timings of like 5 different things at once, which isn't that fun. Not to say that the game isn't fun though, I've enjoyed plenty of the levels here, most of them are pretty clever, but a lot of these don't even really feel like puzzles or timing challenges, just trial and error. Here's one level that I actually had a lot of fun with. I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong for a while. I thought I was supposed to bounce this penguin up this cliff with the zebra, but it just wasn't working. Then I figured out that I was actually going about it all wrong, and I was actually supposed to use the penguin to slide the zebra towards the cliff and get the elephant that way. I felt very clever when I figured it all out, which is kind of what a puzzle game is supposed to do. One thing that's always sort of annoying about physics puzzle games though is that it's kind of hard to tell sometimes whether what you're doing is the intended solution and the hitboxes are just weird, or if you're just overthinking it and doing it wrong. Like I think I failed most often on the levels where you have to bounce an animal off of a zebra, because I swear sometimes they would just roll off its back. It all just has a general air of jankiness that sort of dampens the experience. This game has an art direction that from here on I've chosen to describe as corporate indie, which I found is pretty much the default art style for old Flash games. Indie referring to the seemingly small team and budgets used to create these, and corporate referring to the very sanitized, smoothed over art design, use of stock assets, and kind of app storification of the whole deal. App storification meaning a bunch of sequels and spin-offs, level selects that look like this, you know. The thing stopping me from just calling these games Flash shovelware is that shovelware is like mass-produced garbage made to scam people. These games are like mass-produced good bitch made to make people go and congregate and play with their companions. Like, the game design is great, the ideas are great, it's just, you know, ugly. No, not ugly, maybe uninspired, but honestly, I feel like that's kind of the charm of this game. Like, the art is so boring that it kind of wraps around to being charming. For some of the frames, you can see lines wobbling and overlapping the sprites, that's kind of fun. And it's even funnier when there are these tiny little fragments of a personality poking through the cracks, specifically in the sound design. Like, when you stop a cow, it does this, and then when you knock over a giraffe, it does this. I wonder where these sound effects came from. They kind of seem like stock sound effects, but I guess the person who made them had to have manually compressed them or something. They sound like scratch sound effects. I also think it's pretty funny that the entire game uses a Sleepy Time remix of Jingle Bells, except for when you win a level, where it plays this crunchy-ass meme remix of Entrance of the Gladiators, which I got a full taste of when I didn't hit the elephant hard enough on this level. What is this, some kind of unpolished game? Huh? Snoring is pretty good. I haven't checked out the sequels yet, but it seems like Snoring 3 actually tries to fix the clip art issue, which is cool. Alright, I know a couple of you have to have played Snoring. It was on the main page constantly back in the day. But one thing you probably haven't played, or if you have, I at least haven't heard of anyone playing it, is Jumpy Ape Joe. At some point, Cool Math Games started pushing out games playable on phones and iPads, but the thing with phones and iPads is that they kinda suck to play games on. Touchscreens are great for games, obviously, the DS is great, mouse is basically just a worse touchscreen, that's a joke. But the thing computers and DSs have that phones don't is buttons, because a lot of games are just better with buttons. Look at the Phantom Hourglass games. I haven't played those, I can't say anything. But for stuff like platformers, it's just objectively better to have the sensory feedback of a button being pressed. It's really easy to miss jumps on a touchscreen because your finger can just kind of slide away. That's why Geometry Dash uses the whole screen as a jump button. It's just easier to play a game like this when there's less buttons to keep track of. Jumpy Ape Joe solves the problem in basically the opposite way. Instead of taking away the run buttons, it takes away the jump buttons. Great title, right? No, but really, the main mechanic of the game is that you literally can never stop jumping. Every time you touch the ground, you go straight back up again. The entire left half of the screen moves you left and vice versa, so the whole issue of missing buttons that aren't there is pretty much negated. The levels are super simple, the kind of thing that you'd see in like bottom-of-the-barrel shovelware platformers, but not being able to stop jumping adds a whole new layer to the gameplay. It's much easier to undershoot and fall off a cliff or get hit by an enemy when you can't just jump out of the way of them. Now, this would all be interesting, but not necessarily anything revolutionary. But that is where the time limit comes into play. At every level, there's a timer constantly ticking down. If you complete the level within the time limit, you get 3 stars, which isn't too hard for the first couple levels. Once you get to the later stages of the game, the timer goes from something you have to half pay attention to and not even really have to think about, to an extremely interesting mechanic. It's not really about retaining your speed as much as it's about not slowing down. Do you get what I mean? It's not like getting stars on levels doesn't do anything. You actually need stars to unlock other characters in the game. I don't think they do anything, but it's pretty cool. And I'm sure you've noticed, but this game is just as much, probably even more of a victim of corporate indie than Snoring, but while Snoring's version was kinda charming, this game's is like Lep's World for the iPhone entertainment system. Snoring's art style is made of actual clip art, but despite the fact that Joe is an actual artist working on it, it still manages to feel so much more generic, and I think it's due to the lack of animation. Enemies just kind of squish up and down, and the characters you play as all animate exactly the same. Limbs tween up, limbs tween down. His face stuck the exact same way it was when they met their demise 20 years ago. I was curious to see who created the art for this game. Maybe it was stock art, maybe it was a commission, I don't know, I was just curious. The credits show 2 people who worked on the game, Atan and Ozdy. I tried looking for Atan online and didn't really find anything, so I tried looking for Ozdy instead and found their website. I searched for a while to see if there's a list of collaborators or employees, artists. The website frames Ozdy as if it's like a corporation with a bunch of different people working on it, but I'm pretty sure it's actually just one guy. The Twitter account has only posted a couple of times this decade, and most of those are written as if it was just a single person.
I'm listening to @GaryZ. And I'm so pumped to work.
All this to say, I didn't learn anything about Atan, or honestly much about Jumpy Ape Joe. What I did learn though is that Ozzy actually did like a whole bunch of games. He ported Bob the Robber to Phaser Plus TypeScript. I don't know what that means. I think those are 2 different things. Bob is one of those games that I always saw but never really gave enough of a shit to play past like the first level, but I know that it's pretty iconic and Cool Math considers it one of their classics, so that's pretty cool. Hooda himself. They got the Hooda to be in this game? Is that a penis? I was never a huge fan of the Papa's games. It's not like I disliked them, I just never really played them. I think I played Donuteria, Bakeria, Sushiria, but I might be confusing that with Sushi Slicer. Hey look, alcohol! I think they were just a little too in-depth for me. It's like, when I play a Flash game, I kinda just want to be in and out, 1 or 2 levels, but Papa's games sort of feel trapped as browser games. There's like character customization and shit. The one Papa's game I actually really remember though, even though I've played it probably less than any of the other ones, was Jacksmith. Jacksmith sort of feels like a failed experiment by Flipline to expand their minimum wage simulator games into other series and universes. The reason I say failed is because after this came out, they didn't make any more Jacksmith games and just went back to making thousands of Papa's games. In Jacksmith, he plays a horse named John and his assistant Scout, who are traveling in their blacksmith carriage on a journey to save the kidnapped princess. Well, not actually to save the princess, but to sell weapons to the adventurers who were trying to do that. But to sell weapons, you need to make weapons, and to make weapons, you have to do Papa Louie mini mini-games. The thing that kind of separates this games from the Papa's games is that it matters like way more how well you do in the game. Of course, it's not like Papa's doesn't penalize you for fucking up, it's just, it feels a lot less tangible. Like, you feel bad that you messed up and it hurts to see the score lower at the end of the day, but in Jacksmith, messing up has actual consequences for the main gameplay, because again, the adventurers are using your weapons to progress through the level. The durability of their weapon is essentially a health bar, so if you mess up an important order, then the team is going to be severely compromised. You don't have to beat every enemy in a level, which seems like it's to make the game easier, but think of it like how Pikmin makes you keep going even after an extinction. It's not the game babying you, that's the game forcing you to deal with the impact of your mistakes. But what is the impact? The way Papa's works is that each game is a different food. You know how you're going to make the order each time, the differences just come with the toppings and ingredients. It only gets difficult when you're juggling multiple orders at once, because you have to make sure not to mix them up when under a time limit. In Jacksmith, there are multiple different weapons, all made in different ways, but the customers don't specify a recipe, which in this game's case would be more damage or durability to a weapon. You have to decide what recipe you'll pick based on the available resources, which you get by defeating monsters. If you don't defeat enough in one day, you probably won't have enough to splurge on much the next day. You do get an infinite supply of the weakest materials though, so cool. You could just make up your own recipe and put whatever handle and cap you want, but if you follow the unlockable recipes you get, the weapon gets stat bonuses. That's sort of where the game starts to lose me though. As far as I can tell, the weapon parts you get from any given enemy is pretty random, so there's no guarantee you'll get the parts you need in a day or the next. It's just a whole layer of RNG that I'm not a huge fan of. But hey, you could use the gems you get from the enemies to buy fucking table scraps. The minigames in Papa's are pretty easy to figure out. Press a button, leave something waiting for a bit. If the food looks fucked up, then you'll know you did it wrong. Plus, it gives you little pop-ups telling you your score. Jacksmith's minigames don't really feel tangible, if that makes sense. I keep saying tangible. I can never really tell if I've done something wrong, and I never really feel an obligation to rush things. For a while, I assumed that the reason all of my weapons were looking like this was because I was using copper, the weakest material, or maybe I'd hammered it wrong, and I feel like I had that confirmed when I didn't get any kind of penalty or anything. I only realized pretty late into my admittedly short playthrough that I was supposed to pour the metal slower, and that's why I was coming out wrong, and to this day, I don't really get how I was supposed to be doing the hammer minigames. I just don't get it. So why did Jacksmith fail? Or I guess I don't know if it actually failed, but typically Flipline milks their franchises for all they're worth, so based on the whole lot of nothing this shit's getting, I'm gonna assume it failed. Well, Papa's characters are marketable, cute, and great for Flash games. They're so successful that they have an app where all you do is pose them. Plus, with the limited animation they use in this game, they don't look weird. Jacksmith uses a more realistic style. It looks fine, but it's not as marketable as Papa's, and the characters look way weirder in motion because the team didn't really figure out a better way to animate the more complicated designs, and most of all, it's basically just Papa's without the heart. It's too serious when all Flipline's successes have been fun and whimsical. It's pretty fun though. I used to think this was the best game on Cool Math, and that's because it is. Sticky Ninja is sort of controlled like Angry Birds, a terrible comparison, but I generally don't know how else to present this. You move by flinging the ninja at walls. Since the ninja is sticky and the world is seemingly made of Velcro, he'll stick to them. The goal of each level is to collect all the treasure by killing enemy ninjas and then getting to the exit. Pretty easy if you're boring, but very challenging and fun if you're aiming for perfects on every level. Pretty much like most Flash games of this type, your jumps are counted, so to get a perfect, you need to finish the level with the least amount of jumps possible. For the first couple levels, it's pretty easy, just combo ninjas, take skips when you can, and don't make any mistakes. But when moving platforms, wind, different surfaces, power-ups, and other types of ninjas start to show up, that's when it gets difficult. There are some surfaces, usually metal, that the ninja can't stick to, so when you hit them, you slide right off to the ground. Sometimes you can find slides made of smooth surfaces, which are pretty fun. I think the levels that utilize these are probably some of the best. Then there's bouncy things, which are sorta hard to figure out. Since you're sticky, a lot of times you aren't really in the best location to fully utilize the bounciness, so typically they feel more like obstacles and things to help you like they'd be on a normal platformer. I never really got the hang of how the physics on these things worked. Dangerous things are actually more helpful than the name would imply. When you hit a dangerous thing, you're sent back to where you were before you jumped to it with no penalty to your score besides the jump you took to get there. So if you're kicking an engineer one, it would probably be better to overshoot the jump and run into the spike so you don't need to waste another jump going back to where you were. There are 3 types of power-ups in Sticky Ninja: Earth, Fire, and Water. Earth power-ups create platforms, are only used in very specific circumstances, and they don't really add anything to the game. Fire power-ups give you shurikens to throw at enemies. If you don't miss too many of them, that gives you 10 enemies that you don't have to waste jumps for. Water power-ups are like fire power-ups, but bombs. They drop underneath you. All the levels are used in are either super slow or confusing, or both. Okay, take this one for example. This is actually a pretty good segue into the ninja types too. This is the dangerous ninja. If you touch it, you die, so you have to use switches or power-ups to kill them. These balloons activate when you attach to the underside of them, so you have to hit the ninjas with the water power as you pass above them. The main issue is that these hooks are super janky. You attach to them at a weird angle, which makes bombing kind of annoying, and the perfect condition is really super strict. There's also this level, Ski Lift, where you have to ignore the ski lift, because if you take it, you have to go all the way back down to get the ninjas. I feel like there had to have been some kind of glitch that made the water power-up only show up once you got to the top of the ski lift, because it kind of seems like it was not supposed to be like that. The level still works, it's just really annoying. Oh yeah, the ninjas. So there's the basic ninja, there's the dangerous one that I already talked about, there's the kite ninja, which is only used like twice, but I like it, it's fun. Then there's the hard ninja. So the hard ninja basically works like the dangerous ninja, where you need to use a power-up on it, but the difference with these is that when you touch them, so typically you have to knock them into dangerous things. All these different mechanics combine to make a pretty great Not You game. My favorite level is probably this one. I think it's called Trees. Can't imagine why. It's pretty freeform. There's a part that sort of splits off into 2 paths. You have to at least dip into the second path to kill these ninjas, but it's your choice whether you decide to spend a couple more jumps to get this fire power up. Killing ninjas will be a lot easier, but you'll also have to be a lot more careful with your jumps from now on. I like this level too. The exit is right above you. You can get to it in only a couple jumps, but you still have to kill the ninjas. With the freeform nature of the level, it's a fun challenge trying to find the best route through the ninjas into the exit. It's super hard, but it was really satisfying to complete. This game looks great too. I feel like despite the simple art style, it's kind of able to surpass corporate indie and make an art style for itself, a really appealing one too. It sort of reminds me of Patapon, where the foreground is fully black and the background is just a very simple, slightly muted gradient. I love that. I like the levels where you're in the forest, and especially the ones with the ocean background. I wonder who these pirates are. But unlike Patapon, the game still shows colors in the foreground, so instead of feeling like a really simplified depiction of a landscape, which is also great, it feels more moody, like a quiet night after a rainstorm. I feel like a lot of the reason I love this game so much is because of the music. It's really dramatic, but also sort of low-key. I feel like it really makes the aesthetic of this game. I can't imagine playing without it. Every time you restart a stage or move on to the next one, it toggles between 2 songs, one which feels a lot more like stereotypical ninja music, and one that's a lot more mysterious and subtle, probably my favorite one. I wanted to find out where this music came from. I just assumed it was stock music, but I wanted to be sure. It wasn't too hard to find information about this song, which I found out was called Tibetan Sunrise by Bjorn Lin, which is actually from a different game, Seven Kingdoms 2, which is also where the main menu music was from. This game's, and get this, FNAF 2's. Anyway, so I figured if 2 of the songs from Sticky Ninja were from Seven Kingdoms 2, the third one must also be from this game. So I started skimming the soundtrack, and nope, I tried checking Kinsider, nope. And then, when it seemed like all hope was lost, I saw this video on my feed. Okay, so it seems like a different Flash game also happened to use the same music, which is a pretty funny coincidence. It's a little weird that it uses the same font, though. Is that a screenshot from the game? What a weird coincidence. Okay, well if this channel has uploaded one of the songs from the game with the original name of the song, they probably upload the others, right? But what are the chances that all of the music from this game was also used in Sticky It? What a crazy coincidence! Oh. Okay, well the song is called Clockwork Asia. It seems like the developer got his hands on these songs from just purchasing a minute loop of them on a stock website. The Seven Kingdoms OST's license was bought by a stock music site after it came out, so that's why the songs are in such short loops. That's why only one of them isn't from a game. Whatever. What the fuck is up with this game? So, I'm not a huge fan of Regular Show. I don't know why, I haven't watched very far into it, but I kind of felt an urge to play... No, not play. Complete this game. Why does this game exist? Did Long Animals, the developer of Sticky Ninja, approve this? Did Cartoon Network just straight up steal this game? Are there any meaningful differences between this and the original? Are the answers lying at the end? It's the same game. Some of the dialogue is slightly altered to make it more Mordecai-like. Specifically, they keep calling the hard ninjas yellow ninjas for pretty obvious reasons, except for the little tutorial bubbles, they still call them hard. There's a new cutscene at the start, but they remove the animation at the end of the original and replace it with the still image of Mordecai and Rigward fighting, which kinda sucks. Oh, also there's a ninja scroll at the top of the stage now, but collecting it doesn't do anything. So, okay then. Okay, these aren't cool math games, but this video isn't about cool math games, this is about cool, pause, math games. So, Hooda Math is a site that I probably would have never used or even known about, except for 1 year halfway through, the school caught onto the fact that cool math games was an actual math games and blocked that shit, so the class started using Hooda Math instead, which is just as not math related as cool math, so I don't know why they didn't bother cracking down on that, but whatever. Okay, so Hooda has all the cool math games that you could technically pass off as being math adjacent. 2048, Papa's, and Duck Life are technically business management games, but they also had their own original games too. Hooda Lemonade Stand, for example. But one thing, or multiple things I guess I did play, are Hooda's own line of escape games. There are a fucking bunch of these. They were churning these out like butter. There are a bunch of sub-series here too. There's Mainline Hooda Escape, there's Hooda Escape National Park, Escape States, Big City, Capital City, Room Escape, Must Escape, Fantasy Escape, Grayscale Escape, Find My Baseball, Find My, which is just Find My Baseball with different kinds of balls, and Find HQ, which is just Find My Baseball with Han Kwang Kyle. One thing that I kinda remember about these escape games is that they're kinda hit or miss, either super vague or way too easy. Here's an example. In Find HQ Funhouse, there's a code that you find at one point that's just 2 numbers with a dash in between. This is like halfway through the game with pretty much no math puzzles. You know, it's a cool math ripoff site. It's expected that it's not gonna have actual math in it. So I think a pretty fair assumption is that these are 2 different codes or part of one larger code, but no, it's subtraction. Okay, well, maybe I was just being stupid there. In Room Escape 3, there's a code on this phone that says 555 minus 4685. Okay, that's a negative number, so I'm gonna assume that I leave out the minus sign on this code? No, you're supposed to ignore the first part. Oh, but that's an area code! Yeah, typically you dial the area code. It's part of the phone number. And then sometimes the game just fucking breaks, so it's hard to tell if the game is just glitched or the puzzle is genuinely super complicated. In Escape UFO, you literally can't exit the first screen because it's broken. According to the walkthrough, you're supposed to use the sequence that's on the lasers and type it into the right-left machine. The lines move. They pass each other. Is the code different now? Which version should I pay attention to? Well, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't work. In Amazing Escape the Maze, there's this stand here that says Eros, which is a very inspired choice for a children's math game. Then there's another stand that looks the same, and when you click on it, it tells you to type something, and Eros is way too small to fit in that space, so what am I supposed to do? ROSD. You type ROSD. R-O-S-D. What does ROSD mean? Why does ROSD also not fit into the space? What does ROSD have to do with Eros? Did they mean to make it say aroused? Because that would fit into the space, but, 2 things. 1, how do you fuck up the coding that badly? How does that even... Whatever. 2, A very inspired choice for a children's math game. Am I being too negative? I've seen people say that I'm too negative, but I hope you know that when I talk about parts of a game I don't like, it's not like a condemnation of it. I'm not saying you're wrong for liking it. I'm not saying I don't like it. I just feel like parts of a game that kind of suck are just as important and interesting as the parts that are actually good. I try to make it a point to focus more heavily on the parts of a game I like than the parts I don't. People who follow me on Twitter might notice that I haven't talked about OVO yet. That's why. Sorry. Anyway, I think this might be the best use of corporate indie ever. Snoring was a good starting point, but that only really had it in the animals. Jumpy Ape Joe had it in like the most unappealing way imaginable, but Hooda? Perfection. The characters are all stock images. The original assets range from pretty good clip art to barely held together with glue and scotch tape. It's such a unique aesthetic. The lack of any kind of shading or lighting makes for a really strange atmosphere. Your mind kinda has to fill in the gaps of everything. It's like the modern equivalent of NES era pixel art. I played most of these games in short bursts at the tail end of class, when everyone was quiet, half focused, no headphones, so even if the audio was anything notable, I wouldn't have known, and maybe 5 minutes to immerse myself in this world created for me. You know, funhouses are kinda weird, right? Amusement parks in general kinda seem like they're all based on such an outdated idea of what's considered fun. Golden red, blinking bulbs. I feel like there's always faces all over these things. Puppets, clowns, cartoon characters, Indian caricatures, like a whole lot of Indian caricatures, and tigers. It's not even really a facade, because calling it a facade implies that it's like hiding something, but all you have to do is look down at what you're walking on and bam, illusion shattered. But these are more like fun porches. When I hear funhouse, I usually think of something more akin to like a play center, which are just as weird if not more. I think we as a society need to accept that bright colors are just never gonna work that well in architecture, at least not like this. A single light bulb goes dim and suddenly the whole vibe is completely off. I went to one of these for a birthday once and I was always struck by how fucking big this place was, especially as a kid, compared to how small the jungle gym was in comparison. There's a bounce castle here too, so while you're climbing through this plastic maze, you have this loud sound blasting at you from outside. And bam, illusion shattered. What is this, some kind of liminal space? I sort of went into this segment expecting to just talk about funny, bad adventure games for Zoomers, and that's kind of what most of these are, but I actually ended up enjoying myself with a lot of these. Not just with my twisted mind tricking me into thinking that these games looked good, they do, but specifically a series of games that I almost didn't even try, the Amazing Escape games. I only played 2 of these. The Amazing games are surprisingly long, and after playing like 7 of these Hooda Escapes for this video, I think I kind of started to realize how samey all of these games are. Once you figure out the pretty small bag of tricks these games pull from, you've pretty much figured them all out. All of them, except for these. So right off the bat, that's music. There's music in this. That's something I've only found so far in the HQ games, and it's pretty much just looping funhouse music. Then I noticed the HUD. All the other games pretty much looked exactly the same, but this one is actually kind of cool looking. You get to combine items, you get to wiggle them around the screen when you pick them up. The presentation is instantly like 10 times better than the others. And the puzzles? Holy shit! An actual adventure game? There's like 2 combinations in this whole game. That's insane for Hooda. It's also like surprisingly mature. Like, not anything crazy, but there is a part in this one where you find an empty revolver loaded with bullets and shoot beer bottles with it, which just feels a little intense for a game like this. But there's actual stuff for you to do in this game. You unlock new areas that actually feel like a part of the world and not just the next puzzle room. The puzzles are clever. The only puzzle I wasn't huge on was this part where you see a sign saying rated in one room and a combo lock in the other room, and you have to not type rated into it, but trade. It's an anagram. What is here to imply that I would need to anagram this word? Whatever. It's good. And there's 10 of these things. Remember in my last video when I talked about loving the expansiveness of the original King's Quest? Well, Escape the Maze is a huge map to explore, and a map, and a little section on it to write notes and clues on. This is fucking great. I still don't really know what the mascot is supposed to be though. Is it a penis? Fine turkey, Tom. No thanks. Dude, this game is so fucking fun. So get this, you're Fat Man and your favorite burger restaurant is about to close in 1 minute. Get to burger restaurant in 1 minute. There are a lot of things that I really appreciate about this game. For one, I've always loved the old school style of platformer that makes you restart the whole thing when you die. Sonic 1 and 2, the Marios, Alex Kidd, Dynamite Headdy, a lot of Sega games, mostly Sega games. You're given a very simple moveset that through repetition and trial and error you get a better hang of the longer you go. It felt like a real accomplishment just getting to see like the 3rd level. It's punishing, but it's fun. This game is pretty much just that on fucking steroids. You have infinite lives, but if the counter goes over a minute, you're right back to the start. Since you're so fat, you break bricks when you fall on them, a pretty simple mechanic that becomes a lot more complicated as the game goes on. First, it's just to get through the level, then it's to get shortcuts, then it's to mess with your head on what is and what isn't considered a breakable brick. As the game goes on, the game meaning like 10 or so runs, you get a better feel for the right heights you have to fall from for a brick to break, how to time jumps, that kind of thing. It's great, it's addicting, and it's fun. I like the platform on like floating pavement and move through levels by taking a bus carried by cherubs. It kind of gives the impression that you're supposed to be in a city, but like a slightly strange version of a city. The sky kind of reminds me of Hotline Miami. It doesn't shift colors gradually like it does in that game, but it does when you switch levels or die, so it gives a pretty similar vibe either way. There's also 3 60-second Santa runs. I played a little bit of the first one and it didn't really click with me. It felt a little too bloated with mechanics for the kind of game that this is, but again, I've only played like 2 runs, so what do I know? Okay, this might actually be the best game that I've played for this video. So Diggy is kind of like a strategy game. The goal of the game is to reach the Earth's center, and you have a limited amount of energy given to you each day. When you run out, you move on to the next day, and your energy and holes are refilled. You get money by collecting trash and ore underground, so you want to maximize how far you go down and how much ore you collect, because at the end of each day, you're able to upgrade your drill, ore radar, and energy tank with the money you collect. It's a really addicting gameplay loop, especially once you reach the lava and your main goal shifts to getting as much money as you can each day. It sort of feels like a mix of Pikmin 2 and Terraria. You get an upgrade at one point that makes it so your entire energy tank refills if you backtrack to the surface, which adds a whole new layer to the game where you have to make sure that your tunnels are able to be platformed out of. In the later stages of the game, when you get a higher energy tank level, the ability to earn more energy from ore, dynamite, stuff like that, combined with having to make the tunnels diagonal, turns them into these really crazy mazes, which are pretty fun. On the first day, you're given a short cutscene where the ghost of Diggy's grandpa appears and sets up the plot. The story of this game is pretty simple. Diggy's dream has always been to reach the center of the Earth, so he's gonna try to reach the center of the Earth. Did you forget about the hot lava deep inside the Earth? It will fry you like a beef! Where it gets kinda weird is mostly in how it's presented though. You may have noticed, but the dialogue in this game is all presented through pretty broken English. Not enough to be like distracting, but enough that it's noticeable and sorta funny. It's written pretty stilted and there's no punctuation. It kinda reminds me of Slayer's X dialogue. Also, the ghost of Diggy's dead grandfather? I guess it's not that weird, but for a cool math game, it's a little heavy, right? It's kind of a good summary of everything about this game, honestly. A little heavy. The music that plays throughout the whole game is sort of intense. It kind of feels like the music that would play during a huge revelation in an RPG. As you dig, you sometimes find these artifacts in the ground, small ones and big ones which explode to reveal themselves, which is pretty cool, but it's sort of fucked me over a couple times. You can read descriptions of all of these artifacts from Diggy, and it reveals some kind of weird stuff about this world. First of all, he's not just some other creature or a stylized human, he's an evolved form of some creature that took over after the fall of humanity. Some Splatoon shit. There's a submarine that went missing years ago that Diggy just finds buried in the dirt. A nuke, too? Just under some random road in the middle of nowhere, which also, where are we? I don't know what about the above ground area instills so much weird dread into my soul. I think just the idea of roads in the middle of nowhere kind of freaks me out, because it makes you think about the fact that someone, probably a group of people, had to come out here and make this, pave the road, set up these power lines, but it's not connected to anything. Clearly nobody is taking this road because Diggy is comfortable enough just walking along it and digging through it, without any fear of anybody running him over or falling in. The colors are sort of muted, like it's been untouched for years. Someone was here once, but not recently, probably not anytime soon. I feel like this and the strange tone of the dialogue between him and his grandpa, the weirdly definitive feeling music makes it feel like, and I know how fucking insane this is gonna sound, like Diggy is getting ready to die out here. Like, he's in the middle of nowhere, he isn't bothered by the fact that he might get burned by lava, he's talking to ghosts, everything he finds down here has some kind of relation to death. He's literally digging his own grave. I mean, obviously that's not the intention, that's not even what I think is happening, because clearly that's not what's happening. It's just an undertone, I guess. An unintentional undertone. An undertone, if you will. Oh, no, that doesn't really work. The only really complaint I have about this game is that about halfway through it starts getting a little repetitive. A little bit after you finish upgrading your gear almost to the fullest and got into the lava, the only real goal left is to finish your upgrade so you can catch the Wandering Truffle. The game doesn't explain what the Wandering Truffle is. Apparently it's just something you have to find so you don't get fried like a beef. So for a while the game is just kind of grindy. You're able to stay in caves for longer thanks to your upgrades, but that just kind of means that the days last a lot longer and it takes longer to walk back to the surface and refill. There's only one song in this game and it's pretty great for the first 20 minutes, but after that it starts to get a little repetitive. Literally just a single other track would completely negate this. Sticky Ninja only had 2 songs, but I never got tired of any of those because they fucking alternated. After a while, I just muted it and started listening to video essays. Wow, that's so interesting. I didn't know that. So apparently the Wandering Truffle is basically a leprechaun who will just grant a wish for you if you capture it. No, I want to make my way on my own. I'll ask him for a lava suit, so I can make my way through lava. You've always been a stubborn one. I'm proud of you, boy. I will not fail you, Grant. I was pretty excited for the final stretch to the core. I even unmuted the music for this part. What was gonna happen? A final digging challenge? What is the mystery of the Earth Center? Well, I have to know what happens next. Wow, this is dog shit. Okay, right off the bat, you start on the surface of the moon. I guess he escaped off screen. Now he wants to go back. Alright, so this is basically just the baby stupid version of Diggy 1. There's no movement keys, no dig button, no jump button, no radar, just dig. And direct him to where you want him to dig, and try to collect stuff on the way down. The upgrades are a lot less meaningful. The icon for the level 2 battery still has a solar panel on it, despite there not being a solar energy mechanic anymore. There isn't a drill upgrade that lets you dig through harsher dirt faster, so that's not a mechanic anymore. You can still invest into treasure to make it sell for more, but that's way more expensive now, and you can do it for treasure that almost never shows up. Why are there so many human skeletons on the moon? If you set off dynamite, it plays explosion sounds constantly until you reload. It's just the first game, but stupider. I left it going without pressing anything and went to watch a video in another tab, and I tabbed back in to see that I had won. That's the mystery of the moon, I guess. I checked another playthrough to see if I had missed a cutscene, but no, that's the mystery of the moon. Oh, but we aren't done yet! What about the prequel, Diggy Gold Rush? So Diggy 1 came out in 2013, Diggy 2 came out in 2017, and Diggy Gold Rush came out last year. Kind of a long break between games. This game, unlike the other Diggies, was actually published and, as far as I can tell, developed by Cool Math themselves. Apparently they were doing some kind of mobile gaming initiative last year, because in Gold Rush you can unlock the original Diggy as a character by downloading the mobile version. And, this certainly feels like a mobile game. In a bad way. They sucked all the charm out of this game, Jesus. The original was so understated and weirdly melancholic, and this game is... This one is kind of a medium between Diggy 1 and 2. You still can't walk or jump, but you at least get to control yourself. It's cute that the radar is a tuning fork now, and I kinda like the teal color on the drill. I like the idea of a Wild West Diggy game, but they've oversimplified all the mechanics, and the art, and basically everything about it. It's also super fucking grindy, because they had to insert ads into it now. I didn't finish it, it's a bad game. I think they kind of went the Jumpy Ape Joe route where they lean way too heavily into the corporate and not enough into the indie. I don't think you need crazy artistic skills to make a good game. You don't need a bunch of money to hire people. You can get away with simplicity. Pretty much all the games I've talked about today use stock music, stock art, circle tool, really simple stuff that anyone can do. I didn't talk about Duck Life in this video, but that game literally just has images from Google in it. And all these games were able to get away with that because they owned it. They turned it into a part of their identity instead of letting it control their identity. I may have come off a bit harsh on Snoring and corporate indie, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad style. I don't think there's such a thing as bad art. Even what could be considered bad still has value in other ways, but there is such a thing as flawed art, and corporate indie is a style that's very easy to flaw. And the thing separating something like Snoring or Hooda from something like Diggy Gold Rush is pretty simple. Passion, soul. Snoring style worked for me because despite the art feeling so sterile and corporate, the animation was really cute, the sound design was funny, the game was, good. You can tell whoever made it had so much fun making it. They didn't know how to draw animals, so they used what resources they had available to them, a bunch of SCV files of a bunch of goofy looking animals. Then they injected their own skills, animation, humor, game design, and it all comes together really cohesively. The Hooda escapes worked because despite how janky and flat they are, you can tell whoever made them was really passionate about them, like they really wanted to get kids into math and make a fun game. Even though their artistic skill might not have been the best, I feel like it really paid off. These amazing escapes are super fun, and I think that virtue amplifies the rest of it. Like, I think these games are kind of charming looking now, I don't know. And like, Jumpy Ape Joe technically has more effort put into its art, Diggy Gold Rush technically has more effort, but where's the passion? I feel like I've seen these games 1,000 times before. What reason do I have to care about them? They make me feel so fucking empty. Like, I like JJJ, but I feel like that game isn't really gonna stick with me like the other games I played have. I feel like nobody here actually wanted to make these games, and honestly, I feel like we shouldn't really be judging art by how much effort is put in anyway. All that does is discourage newer artists from making stuff and scare them away from wanting to continue making art. Like, not only is that super fucking elitist, but it kind of feels like something an AI artist would say. You don't want that, do you? Like, the problem with AI art isn't that they're not putting enough work in. The problem is that they don't actually care about art. They aren't making this because they want to learn photography or painting but don't have time. It's because they want to feel like they're doing that while using computer-generated stock images. If they're willing to put as much time and effort into learning a skill that they did typing slight variations of the same prompt into Wall-E or whatever, then this wouldn't even be an issue right now. Basically what I'm getting at is that Snoring is to Diggy Gold Rush what Marcel Duchamp's Fountain is. What the fuck? I don't know, man. I feel like talking about the art design of a bunch of weird low-budget indie games from the early 2010s that nobody cares about anymore has been getting me thinking a lot about art in general, I guess. Make more weird video games, make more art. That goes to all of you out there in the audience. You're an artist, whether you have artistic talent or not, so own that, make that part of your style. Don't bend to the whims of your limitations, bend them to your whims. Whatever you think you don't have, you still have a soul, right? I don't know, I feel like if you still have that, you'll be okay. Thanks for watching.
Computing unit rate with ratios using fractions. Before we go to a unit rate, we're going to talk about what a rate